Started. If I sound like I'm yelling, it's because I am with this mask. But I'd like to welcome you and thank you very much for being here to our airport master plan. I think it's an extremely important piece of our community and part of our community. But before I get into anything like that, I would like to recognize City Council Member Rick Cheatham. I always get messed up. I don't know why.
He doesn't know who you are.
But Rick Cheatham's here. I've got our County Commission Jeff Huff here. I've got Mayor England right here. And believe it or not, Mayor England and I both have things that we got to run to. And so I just want to thank Mayor England for just swinging in, because it's just going to be a few minutes, but just to show that support for the airport is important. So many of you are probably wondering a little bit about air service. I just want to take that off the table really quick. We are working with SkyWest. We have been working with SkyWest, and we will continue to work with SkyWest on a number of different things. We'll keep you informed as quickly and as much as we possibly can as those things develop. And so just know that we're working with them. We did have a meeting yesterday with SkyWest, some top officials at SkyWest there. We had a meeting yesterday afternoon. It was a very productive meeting, and we'll have another one here in the next few weeks probably. Hopefully they'll be back with some information that we asked them for by the end of this week. And so, but the master plan's a lot more than just air service. And as you know, the airport is a lot bigger than just a little airstrip we land airplanes on. So I appreciate you being here, because we've got a number of opportunities for economic development. We have a number of opportunities for many different things. As you know, at the airport we have a racetrack, we have businesses, economic development, we have a motocross track, we have a, what is that airplane?
Oh, model airfield.
The model airfield out there. So we've got a lot of different things from recreation to industrial parks to the airport itself, where we fly airplanes in and out of. So it's a lot bigger than what most people think an airport is, just flying airplanes in. And so I just appreciate you being here, and our consultant, where you at? Right here. They're going to take it over here in just a minute. Am I turning to giving it back to you?
For a minute.
I'll let Alan say a few words, but I'm sorry I've got to run. Alan, I guarantee, will fill me in on things, and I'll be right in the middle of it. But we've got a number of different things we've got to do, and so if it's okay, I would like to excuse both myself and Mayor England. Thank you again for being here and for everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate that. I am Alan Evans. I'm the airport manager, and I want to thank the mayor for his continued support at the airport. He has been a real advocate, and I really appreciate working with him as we go through some of the challenges that we have and some of the successes that we've had at the airport. I'd like to introduce my administrative assistant, Christy Hines. To be honest with you, I couldn't do anything without her. She really keeps us moving forward and in a direction that we need to go. So I appreciate her being here with us tonight as well. I wasn't going to say too much about the air service. This particular meeting is really about infrastructure, and that's what you're going to find as we go through this a little later. It's going to address a lot of the infrastructure and the things that we need to do on the airfield side. So I'm glad the mayor made a couple comments about the service. That's been kind of a hot topic as of late, but we are doing what we can to try to move forward and continue with service as we're used to anyway. As far as this goes, this is our kickoff meeting for our airport master plan, and back in February the airport started a selection process where we reached out for RFQs from companies to do this master plan for us. And we had a couple of them that presented, and they were both very good companies. But at the end of the day, as we looked at our needs and the things that we thought were going to be important to us, we felt like the company that we selected was the best one for this job, and we still feel that way. It's TO Engineers. And we're very excited to have them on board leading this project. We think that they'll do a wonderful job. They've got a great wealth of experience. They'll probably share a lot of it with you. They work with smaller airports. They work with some of the bigger airports. They've got a good array of experience in this field. And so we're very excited to have them. I would like to just go ahead and introduce TO staff and then turn the time over to them. So Dave Mitchell is our Aviation Services Manager. We've worked with Dave on many projects over the year. He's advanced in their organization, and it's great to work with him, and I'm really happy to have him on board.
As Alan said earlier, when I started working with him, I had hair.
Yeah, he did have hair at one time in his career.
But I don't think it was our airport that made him lose it.
No.
Well, a fencing project may have made him lose a little of it. But anyway, 7 miles of chain link fence can kind of do that to you. Jared Wingo is the lead aviation planner. He's the one that is going to take this presentation over. We have Zara Sadeh is
Over here.
right here. She's going to, and she is also an aviation planner. We're glad to have her on board. Wayne Reeder is an aviation planner that will be working on this. He's not with us tonight. He's at a meeting, I believe, in Montana that was taking place. So we'll miss him, but he's a great asset. And then Aviatrix Communication is our public involvement coordinator. And so our meetings are going to be recorded. They'll be on our website. You'll be able to get this information as we move forward. It'll be out there, and that's the company that's going to help get us that information out. And the person in charge of that is Katie Franco, and she's also not here with us tonight, but we are moving forward in that. So without any further ado, I'll turn the time over to Jared to have our presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan. Good evening, everybody. From the TO's project team, we are very excited for this project. We've been in communication for the last 6 months or so, negotiating what this project would look like. We hope to talk about our project, the process involved, as well as what you can expect from the public in this process and how you can make comments and be involved in this this about 2-year process, basically. Zara, if you want to, next slide there. Again, welcome. Those are the names of the folks that will be actively participating from the project team's perspective. Like I had said, we've got Alan, we've got Dave, myself, Jared, and Zara working at the computer, as well as Wayne out of our Coeur d'Alene office, who does the heavy lifting for us. To kind of give you a little bit of a background about the airport, we take a look at the past. As most of y'all know, or may not know, the initial airport was an Army Air Force base, or Air Corps base. It was constructed in 1942 and opened in 1943 as part of the war effort during World War II. In 1949, the city of Pocatello took over ownership of the airport. And then basically what we talk about in the master plan process is go through a little bit more of an detailed history of the airport, and then at the end of it kind of recap where we are today. So where we're at today is in 2020, Pocatello Airport contributed over $184 million in economic output to the local community and supports over 1,000 jobs in the local area. So what is a master plan? It's the future vision of the airport. We take a comprehensive look at the airport. We describe the short, medium, and long-term goals and development projects to satisfy and meet demands of the airport. We want to understand the airport issues. We want to identify discrepancies, areas of opportunities, and constraints. We want to consider the impacts of aviation trends, both currently as well as the future. We also want to determine the need for airport infrastructure. We want to provide cost estimates as well as a detailed and overview schedule of project implementation. And we want to obtain stakeholder and public input throughout the process. What we want to show here is the funding for airport projects. As a federally eligible airport, the airport receives federal funds from the Federal Aviation Administration. This project received a considerable amount of funds to conduct the study. And we just wanted to highlight a few things here. And since 2005, the FAA has participated in airport projects of roughly $32.8 million that comes back into the community for development projects. In addition, state funding also has provided over $150,000 since that same time frame. So, you know, you think about tax bases, these dollars come back to the community. And typically on federal projects, it's 9 cents on a dollar comes from the federal government when we talk about federal projects. So something to keep in mind moving forward in this process. When we talk about the master plan efforts, we go through a process that's governed by the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. In this process, it's dictated by advisory circulars called the Airport Master Plan AC. And in that AC, we have detailed guidance on how we conduct this process, starting with the existing conditions. In the existing conditions, we really take a snapshot of the existing conditions of the airport, take an inventory of the airport's facilities, tenants, take a look at the socioeconomic factors at the airport, as well as the economic impact of the airport itself. Once we have this data collected, we start going into the aviation demand forecast. And this is a crucial step in the process because what we get out of the forecast process determines the standards that we have to meet moving forward. So in this process, we take a look at air cargo, general aviation, as well as commercial service forecast. We take a look at economic trends, we take a look at aviation trends, and we take a look at historical operational trends to develop a forecast for the next 20 years. Once we get through the forecast, again, like I had said, that's a crucial step in this process. We have to submit this forecast to the Federal Aviation Administration for their approval and critical aircraft determination. Once this approval is received, we start on the facility requirements. And what that does is that takes a look at what we've identified in the inventory, as well as what we've identified in the forecast, and mixes the two to identify any gaps in service, as well as call out those deficiencies so we can improve things for the future. Another look in this process, we take a look at environmental considerations. We take a look at short, medium, and long-term impacts of development projects that may impact the future of the airport. We take a look at wetlands, cultural resources, any of those impacts to ensure that we try to minimize the environmental impact to the airport itself. Once we go through this process, identify the facility requirements, we get into the alternatives. In the alternatives, we start looking at runway dimensions, if there's a need for an expansion of the runway, as well as the taxiway systems, the connectors between hangars, parking spots, out to the runway, as well as terminal building sizes, hangar development areas, all these areas that that there may be some need for expansion or development for the future. Can you go back to that, Zara? This is a very vital part from the public's perspective because this sets the vision for the airport. Once we gather input from stakeholders and the public, the sponsor, the city, will decide a preferred alternative that we will carry through this process. Okay. Once we have these alternatives designed, we put them on paper, and that paper is a set that the airport consultants use, as well as the FAA and other state or other aviation officials use, and that's called the Airport Layout Plan, the ALP. What the ALP shows is the existing and future conditions of the airport. That's where we take a look at the maps of the airport, list out the existing infrastructure, what we've identified in the alternatives, and lay that out on sheets of paper for all of us to use in the future. Going beyond that, once we have everything kind of laid out and development of alternatives, we start putting numbers to projects. What we try to do is maximize outside funding sources for projects, justifying projects, the eligibility of projects, and then listing and providing descriptions of projects in a linear style based on years from the baseline through the 20-year vision of the airport. We try to provide estimated costs as well as identifying those funding sources, and then really try to sequence those projects in the overall capital improvement plan, or CIP, for the airport. So we wanted to show the roles and responsibilities of everybody in this room. As the sponsor, the funding agencies, what we do is provide the data, we organize community efforts, and ultimately adopt the master plan. The FAA is the funding agency that approves the forecast and accepts the master plan through the ALP sheets. Okay? The ITD, that's the state level aviation agency. They use that data to update their aviation system plan, as well as help out in their needs for aviation across the state of Idaho. From the consultant's perspective, we conduct the research, we provide the recommendations, and we document this process here as part of the overall master plan process. And most importantly, the community. Community and the stakeholders share the ideas and offer the recommendations that will ultimately provide the preferred alternative for the ALP and the master plan. And the reason why we do the master plan, besides the vision of the airport, the master plan is very critical to the compliance of the airport in regards to the Federal Aviation Administration. So what we try to do here is just kind of show a glimpse of when the airport accepts federal money in the form of grants, they are abided by grant assurances. So we just kind of list a little bit what those responsibilities are as accepting federal dollars. Again, as we kind of mentioned over and over here, public involvement is a keystone in this process. We encourage stakeholders and the general public to understand what's going on at the airport. We encourage to reach out to the airport to learn what's going on at the airport, as well as basically provide this opportunity to be a funnel for information between the airport and the general public. And we do that through public meetings, which we kind of show here as our tentative schedule for this process. So right now, this is our first meeting. It's our kickoff meeting. Here in the next few months, we will wrap up our inventory as well as do our aviation forecast. Once we have that forecast and it's been accepted by the FAA, we will have our next meeting, hopefully this winter in 21 or 22. And then from there, we start looking at the facility requirements, the alternatives, and then start looking at the draft documents and adoption of the master plan. In addition to the general public's involvement, working with the airport, we've also identified 2 groups that will be instrumental in hearing the community through their particular interest groups. So we've set up 2 groups, one the Technical Advisory Committee as well as the Community Advisory Committee. And what we'll do is, in the TAC, we've identified stakeholders that have interest at the airport. So that could be SkyWest, that could be pilots, that could be the control tower, the FBO, BLM, or Idaho State University. The CAC is more of a representation of the community and beyond. We start looking at local governments, tribal governments, Chamber of Commerce's, county governments, etc. What we want to do here is just to provide the website link for this project. It is the normal iflypocatello.com website. This is where we will post updates, documentation, as well, providing an opportunity for folks to make comments at any time about the airport. So if you go to iflypocatello.com, there is an opportunity at the top right to make comments on the master plan efforts.
Just a note, Jared, it's under the News and Information tab.
Okay.
On there is where
So,
the master plan.
top right, right?
Yep.
Okay. So through our scoping process, we have identified some key issues that we want to foster our communications and discussions amongst users. So for Pocatello, in our preliminary assessment, we're taking a look at a few things here. We're taking a look at runway 321 in regards to certain sections or the runway not being up to FAA standards. We want to take a look at the crosswind runway 1735, in regards to the wind analysis. That's all data that we collect behind the scenes. And we want to look at the runway protection zone analysis, which is a protective surface at the end of a runway for safety purposes. In case you've seen the news today, there was an accident that dealt with an aircraft going in this RPZ area. In addition, we also want to look at taxiway alpha between runway 3 and 21 and identify any safety recommendations that we may have through this master plan process. We also want to talk about taxiway golf and the viability of it moving forward, as well as overall hangar development. And then really kind of dig into the terminal building itself. Look at, are we maximizing the space that we have for the traveling public? So we'll take a look at ticketing areas, holding areas, security, baggage claims, parking, rental cars, etc. And then last of all, we want to talk about land use compatibility and aeronautical use around the airport and on the airport itself. So what are the next steps? As we speak, we're collecting the data that we need for the inventory as well as the forecast. We are drafting the introduction, socioeconomic, and background inventory and forecast chapters. So all these things are going on behind the scenes. Once we have an opportunity to sit down with the sponsor, those chapters will be available online for public consumption for comment. And then while this is all going on, we will be submitting a draft forecast for FAA approval for aviation activity. And then once we have that completed, we start talking about having another meeting here for the forecast itself. Again, when we showed that schedule up, it's tentative, it's subject to change. With the holidays coming up, it may be difficult to get an approval letter from the FAA before the year end. But we at least want to show that to you what our next steps are as a project team. And last of all, we just wanted to provide some contact information. This is my contact information. You can always reach out to the airport. We're constantly in contact via email or chatting about about this project as well as other projects. And we also just want to remind you, go to iflypocatello.com. That's where the latest information is going to be for public consumption. So at this time, this kind of ends the formal presentation. What we'll do is we'll roll into public comment. So if you have a comment that you would want to make or have questions, this is the time to start having that opportunity. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
In addition to working with Alan and Chris, I'm also Commissioner on the Pocatello Development Authority. My question is, how widely does the FAA allow us to get our arms around a master plan for the airport facility? As the mayor pointed out, the airport has a lot of activities on it that are not directly aviation related. We have an industrial park. We have several non-industrial facilities out there that the mayor started to name before he left. How widely does the FAA allow us to get our arms around a master plan that addresses infrastructure requirements and future development of those non-aviation functions at the airport?
So specifically, and Alan, just reach in whenever you want. So specifically for the non-aeronautical businesses,
Yeah.
that's kind of outside the scope of this project.
Okay.
If we identify aeronautical needs, for example, you know, if we have a piece of land that we want to repurpose for development, then that's something that can be discussed as part of this master plan process. But at this point in time, we're not quite there yet. We're doing that data analysis and data collection. And then, you know, as we go into next year, into the spring and summer, we can start having those conversations.
So the FAA's focus is strictly on forecasting aviation-related requirements.
So the primary purpose of the FAA's involvement is one, providing funds to do it, right, because of the grant assurances. And then the second and third, I guess, the second one is the approval of the critical aircraft and the forecast. And then the third is the acceptance of the ALP, the airport layout plan.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
But just to reiterate, the FAA will only pay for what we call airside,
Yeah.
airport-related elements of the plan.
That gets to the heart of my question. Thank
Yeah.
you. Appreciate it.
Those other things could be studied by a locally funded plan. You've done that in the past. There was a land development plan for the airport, I believe is what it was called, that was developed a decade or so ago. That could be done again or updated as a separate effort, but the FAA will only pay for the airport side.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay. Well, I guess at the conclusion of this, again, this material will be provided online. If for some reason you have a comment at that period, reach out via the website or reach out to the project team directly, and we'd be more than happy to assist in any questions you may have. At this time, this kind of concludes our meeting tonight. We will be around to answer any questions you may have individually. And we really do thank you for this time and look forward to working with you over the next 18 to 24 months. Christy?
Jared, there are a couple of members of the CAC and TAC here.
Okay.
If we want to get them together, hang out for a minute, you can introduce them to each other.
Absolutely. After the meeting, the folks that have been identified for the CAC and the TAC, we want to just kind of huddle up and discuss about what our next steps are with those groups. Okay? All right, well, we really do appreciate your time this evening. We look forward to, again, working with you all in your community's vision for the airport.